Nothing gets people more fired up than talking about the mark of the beast, so let's do it. In the book of Revelation, and I'm hoping you remember last week's lessons about kind of the overall guidelines of how to read the book. Some of it's going to relate to things happening then. A few things may relate to things happening now, even in the future. But by and large, the book is about problems they suffered at that time. And you get that in the first few verses. Revelation chapter 1, 4, and 5 give you the audience of the book of Revelation. John, to the 7 churches that are in Asia. Grace to you and peace from him who is, and who was, and who is to come, from the 7 spirits who are before his throne, and from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings on the earth. Okay, what's the message here? There's 7 churches in Asia Minor that he's writing to. And they're about to be caught between they already are caught between 2 very difficult forms of negative influence and persecution and pressure. And he says, I know you're in kind of a vice grip here. The church is going to win. And that's the overall message to those churches. So when you start the second set of symbols, if you remember last week's outline, the first set is about chapter 4 to 11. And then in chapter 12, the second set of symbols begins. It starts out by talking about this evil being who is a dragon, who's attacking the beautiful lady. Okay, so you have the church being attacked by the devil is the big picture. Here's verses 7 through 9. Now a war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Okay, so first we get the dragon. And the dragon, we're told, is Satan. Okay, that's one thing we know now. It's a weird set of symbols, but one thing we know, the dragon is Satan. Okay, check. In the next chapter then, the dragon have people that kind of work for him. Chapter 13, 1 and 2. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its head. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's. Its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. Fascinating the way he describes this monster that comes out of the sea. He says it's got leopard parts, bear parts, and lion parts. If you remember our lesson on Daniel, in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel saw 4 great beasts. And the first 3, the fourth one, he says, I can't even describe it to you. But the first 3 was a lion, a bear, and a leopard. So what John is seeing is kind of this 4th monster beast with pieces of the others all attached to him, this horrible zombie monster coming out of the sea. It goes on to say that this sea beast is influenced by the dragon, right? This isn't Satan, but Satan is kind of pulling the strings behind the sea. Okay. So now let's go to a map and think about this. It's always dangerous pulling up maps and saying, here it is, let me show you. But the best I can guess is if you put the 7 churches of Asia right there in the Asia Minor area, and they look towards the sea, what would they see? That's the direction of Roman power. And if you remember our study from Daniel, Rome was the 4th of the 4 kingdoms. So in my mind, this is describing out of the sea comes that old enemy, the powers of empires, the conquerors, Romans. Power and influence is going to come under the string pulling of Satan to hurt the church. Here come the Romans. That's the sea beast, I think. And then chapter 13, verse 4, and they worshiped the dragon, for they had given his authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? The Romans looked powerful. They conquered the whole world. Who's going to stand up against the Romans? They worship the Romans. They would refer to the emperor, Dominus et Deo, Divus Filius. He is Lord and God, Son of God. Right? They had these titles for him They formed what historians have called the imperial cult, where it's really emperor worship. You must swear fealty to the emperor. And that's would take away from the worship of God and post God. Chapter 13, 7 and 8 said, also it was allowed, the sea beast, to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. So he conquered the world, Romans did. And all who dwell on earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Who are the people who are going to say, no, we don't worship the Roman emperor? The people who follow the Lamb, Jesus Christ, the Lamb who was slain. Christians were going to be faithful even when Rome started to persecute them and demand that they honor and worship the Roman emperor. Okay. Now, so we got the dragon, who is Satan. We have the sea beast, who I think is Rome. And then verse 11, then I saw another beast rising out of the earth, okay, not the sea, the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence, and it makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. This other beast comes out of the land, so not the sea. So think again, you're in Asia Minor. You look one way and there's the Mediterranean. That's where the Romans come from. You look the other way and you're looking back towards maybe Jerusalem or something. That it's these Eastern influences down from Palestine. This monster looks like a lamb. Maybe even a reference to the fact that it would be a Jewish influence. It looked like the lamb. It's not the lamb. Okay, that there is a connection, a commonality between Christ and this monster. It looks like the lamb. It's not the lamb. But in fact, it's being influenced by the devil. The devil's pulling the strings here too. It looks different from the other beast, but it's the same devil pulling strings. And in fact, it's even in cahoots with the other one. And there's some overlap there. So if I have to pick then, if I have to guess, I'm going to say if you're in Asia Minor, the sea beast is coming from Rome, Roman persecution and influence. And the earth beast, the land beast, is coming down from Palestine. That there was an influence and pressure coming up from the Jewish heritage of the church and those that had opposed the spread of Christianity to Gentiles and so forth. The book of Galatians is basically about this struggle between the influence of an antagonistic form of Judaism that rejected Jesus as Messiah against the church. So in summary, the dragon, Satan, is persecuting the church through the sea beast, Roman persecution and influence, and the earth beast, Jewish persecution and influence. Okay, finally now, we get to the mark of the beast. Now that we know who the beasts are, we can get an idea of what might the mark of the beast be. Chapter 13, verse 12, the beasts, exercise all the authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose mortal wound was healed. So the issue at stake from both the first and second beast is everyone's trying to get people to worship the first beast, which is Rome. Are you going to submit to human political military power or to Christ? That's the issue. The issue here is worship the emperor worship. One way to get out of persecution when the Romans come was to say, I'm loyal to the emperor. Do you remember at the crucifixion of Jesus, Pilate said, isn't this your king? And even the Jewish people there said, we have no king but Caesar. Like the one way to get yourself out of trouble was to be a loyal Roman. And yet that often caused you to not be loyal to Christ. And so that's the issue at stake. Are you going to worship the beast or the lamb that was slain? In chapter 13, 16 through 17, also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehand, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. The connection there that's interesting is without the allegiance to the beast. I think that's what the mark is. Unless you have the token of allegiance to the beast, you can't participate in the economy. Well, that makes sense if it's Roman emperor worship. If you didn't swear loyalty to the emperor, you can't buy and sell in Rome. You're a traitor. And so there was economic pressure put on early Christians. Chapter 14 mentions the beast mark again. And another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image, and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the angels and in the presence of the Lamb." So there it just mentions if you swear loyalty to the beast, right? If you have the mark of the beast and you're loyal to him, you lose because God's coming for you, right? That's betrayal. But what I want to notice in this passage and the next several passages is that every time the mark of the beast is mentioned, it's connected explicitly with worshiping the beast, which is the imperial power. The mark of the beast is worshiping a national power. Okay. Chapter 16, verse 2. So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and harmful and painful sores came into the people who bore the mark of the beast and worshipped its image, right? What's the mark of the beast? It's always connected with worshiping the power of the beast. Chapter 19 and 20. "Then I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his army. And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet, who in its presence had done the signs by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped its image. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur." Again, the big point is they all lose, but what is the mark of the beast? It's always connected with, and they worshipped the beast. That's the point. Chapter 20, verse 4. "Then I saw thrones, and seated on them were those to whom the authority to judge was committed. Also I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the testimony of Jesus and for the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received its mark on their foreheads or on their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. What's the mark of the beast? Again, one more time, it's connected with worshiping the beast, mark of the beast. Worshiping the beast, mark of the beast. So when you ask me what's the mark of the beast, the first thing I'm going to say is the mark of the beast is always identified with worshiping the beast, which in this story is some kind of national power. I'm convinced it's Rome. But the point would be true, even if you worshiped American power. If you say, I'm loyal to the president and not to Jesus, or I'm loyal to the president instead of Jesus, it would be the same evil. I think he's talking about the Roman problem, but you can see where it could happen in any country. Any national power that takes your loyalty as opposed to Jesus, you've accepted the mark of the monster. Second, notice in all these passages, the mark of the beast is always received voluntarily. I don't think anyone's being branded with the mark of the beast. No one's having it slipped into their soup or anything. It's people who volunteer, I want to worship the beast. It's going to make my life easier. It's going to allow me to do business easier. It's going to get me out of persecution. It's always something you do voluntarily. So once in a while, I hear people talk about, like, maybe this thing is cryptically the mark of the beast and it's sneaking into our culture. I don't think the mark of the beast is going to sneak anywhere. I think people look at national powers and they say, I'm going to serve that and be loyal to that more than I am to Christ. That's the mark of the beast. In the first century, it had to do with Rome. So what's the mark of the beast? The mark of the beast was swearing loyalty to the emperor and or participating in the worship of the imperial cult of Rome. It was swearing national allegiance rather than loyalty to Christ. And this, let me just tell you a quick story now outside of Revelation to tell you that this really is how it played out. Let me tell you about the martyrdom of Polycarp. Polycarp lived the second half of the first century as the book of Revelation was being written, and the first half of the second century, which was shortly after the book of Revelation was written. So he's living during the time period when I'm saying that's when a lot of this happened. Polycarp claims that he knew John. Literally, this is the story. And here's how it goes. Polycarp was arrested in his late 80s as an elder in a church, and he was causing problems for the Romans by being faithful to Christ. They didn't like it. So they want to end Christianity, and they go arrest Polycarp. And the story goes like this. When he came near, the proconsul asked him whether he was Polycarp. On his confessing that he was, the proconsul, the Roman, sought to persuade him to deny Christ, saying, Have respect to your old age and other similar things, according to their customs, such as swear by the fortune of Caesar, repent and say away with the atheists. So the Romans called the Christians atheists. Why? Because they didn't believe in the Roman gods and they didn't swear loyalty to Caesar. So they say, swear by the fortune of Caesar. Put your life in Caesar's hands. Devote yourself to Caesar, and you can live. Okay? To an 80-year-old man in the trial, all you have to do to live is say, I am loyal to Caesar. He doesn't, by the way. Then the proconsul urging him, saying, swear, and I will set you at liberty. Reproach Christ. Polycarp declared, 86 years have I served him, and he never did me any injury. How then can I blaspheme my king and my savior? He says, Jesus has been good to me my whole life. He is my king. See the rebuke there? All you have to do is say that Caesar's your king. And Polycarp says, I'm sorry, Jesus is my king. And then the proconsul yet again pressed him and said, swear by the fortune of Caesar. And Polycarp answered, since you are vainly urgent that, as you say, I should swear by the fortune of Caesar and pretend not to know who and what I am, hear me declare with boldness, I am a Christian. And if you wish to learn what the doctrines of Christianity are, appoint me a day and you shall hear them. He says, I'm a Christian more than I am a Roman. I am a Christian. I swear by Christ, not by Caesar. One is my Lord and one is not. And he's very kind about it, but he's also determined and bold. They set him on fire. They kill him. They kill Polycarp. They martyr him because he would not swear an oath to Caesar. That, I think, is just like point blank. That is what John is talking about with the mark of the beast. Will you swear by Caesar's name, or is your loyalty to Christ? All you had to do was get out of persecution, was to denounce Christ and say, I have no king but Caesar, which is exactly what people said when they crucified Jesus. It's all you had to say. And the Christians said, no, we're loyal to Christ. And if that means Caesar doesn't like us, that's okay. The final clue to this question then of the mark of the beast actually comes in the text. We skipped over it, but it's back in chapter 13. And it refers to a number. The scariest number in all of Christian history is 666, but it's the final clue to our riddle. Chapter 13, verse 18. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Okay. Okay, John, why don't you just tell us what you're talking about? Irenaeus, who's is an early Christian writer, Irenaeus is a student of Polycarp, who says he was a student of John. Irenaeus explains, had there been any need for his name to be openly announced at the present time, it would have been stated by the one who saw the actual revelation, for he was seen not a long time back, but almost in my own lifetime at the end of Domitian's reign. He says, if John had needed to tell us who he was talking about, he would have. He was seen not very long ago. He was around. He could have answered that question, but he didn't. John kind of cryptically tells you who he's talking about rather than point blank telling you. Why? Well, because it's a good way to start a riot, to say, I'm talking about Caesar, by the way, right? That's trouble. So instead, he gives you a cryptic little riddle. I'm always very suspicious of people that play with numbers because I'm a math guy, and you can make numbers do a lot of things, right? I've seen the name of Barney the dinosaur added up to equal 666. I've seen Ronald Reagan's name added up to 6. You can do it with anything you want, right? So I'm always very suspicious. But on this one occasion, John does say, hey, I'm talking about a beast who is connected to a man. The man is associated with a number, 666. And you can decode it through calculating. I think he's referring to gematria, which is where we get our word geometry in English. And it's an alphanumeric code for assigning numbers to letters. If you wanted to hide a message from the Roman audience, a clever way to do it would be to take Hebrew letters, which they wouldn't really care for to know anyway, and associate them with numbers. And this seems to have been done. When you lay out the Hebrew alphabet with numbers, you could then kind of transcribe names into that numerical count and encode a little hint to people in the know who would have known Hebrew. And I think that's what John is doing. If you take the name of Nero Caesar, Neon Caesar, and you put it back into like that Hebrew script, the numbers associated with it add up to 666. And so while it's a little open-ended, John doesn't spell it out because, as Irenaeus says, he didn't need to. People knew who he was talking about. It seems like that's the hint. I'm talking about Caesar. I'm talking about Nero. I'm talking about swearing allegiance to him instead of Jesus. That's the man under question. So put all that together. What's the mark of the beast? In the first century, it was swearing allegiance to the Roman emperor and the imperial cult as a way to get out of persecution, and rather than being loyal to Jesus as the Romans persecuted you. Today, while it's not a clear reference to anything going on today, the point remains that if you put your loyalty to a nation in the place where your Lord's loyalty should be, you too would have accepted freely a mark of the beast.